David Jenkins heard the sound before he saw anything. A soft, high-pitched whinny that didn't belong in his barn at 4 in the morning. He had been a rancher for 32 years, and he knew every sound his animals made. This wasn't one of them. He had only come out to the barn early because he couldn't sleep. Hadn't been sleeping well for months, really. Checking on the horses gave him something to do in those quiet, lonely hours before dawn. His old mare Buttons was dozing peacefully in her stall, and his gelding Copper was the same. The sound came from the other end of the barn. David grabbed his flashlight and walked down the aisle. His boots echoed on the concrete. When he reached the last stall, the empty one at the end that he used for storage, he stopped dead. A foal stood in the corner with legs splayed awkwardly like all newborns. Her coat was still fuzzy with baby hair. She was gray, or would be gray when she grew up. Right now she was that dark charcoal color that gray foals are born with. Maybe 3 or 4 days old, if that. And she was completely alone. David swung the flashlight around the stall looking for a mare, but there was no horse and no person. Just the foal. A pile of clean straw that hadn't been there yesterday. A bucket of water. A small bag of mare's milk replacer powder propped against the wall. The foal whinnied again and wobbled toward him on unsteady legs. That's when David saw it, a piece of paper folded and carefully tied to the tiny halter around her neck with baling twine. His hands were shaking as he untied it. The note was written in blue ink. The handwriting was shaky but careful, like someone had taken their time, despite difficult circumstances. Mr. Jenkins, her name is Destiny. She was born 4 days ago. I can't keep her and I can't explain why, but I need you to know she's everything good in this world. Please don't let her end up at auction. Please give her a chance to become what she's meant to be. I know you're a good man. I've watched you with your horses. You'll understand someday why I had to do this. I'm sorry I can't stay to explain. I'm sorry for so much, but I'm not sorry she exists. Thank you for saving her life. The note wasn't signed. David read it 3 times with his eyes blurring. Then he looked at the foal. Destiny was staring at him with huge dark eyes. Her tiny muzzle reached toward his hand. "Well," he said with his voice rough, "I guess you're mine now." David Jenkins wasn't supposed to be a single rancher at 56 years old. The plan had been to build this life with someone, to have kids running around, to pass the knowledge down to the next generation. But life had other plans. The Jenkins Ranch was 120 acres in southern Wyoming, tucked up against the Medicine Bow Mountains. David ran a small cow-calf operation and kept a handful of horses. Good ranch horses. The kind that could work cattle all day and still have energy left. Nothing fancy, but honest animals that earn their keep. He had inherited the ranch from his father 15 years ago, and he had been running it alone for the past 8. His wife Leslie had died in a car accident on a winter road. Black ice and bad timing. They had never had children, not for lack of wanting. Just one of those things that never happened. Since then, David had kept to himself mostly. He had a few ranch hands who came in during calving season and haying time. He went to church on Sundays, but he lived a quiet life. Some people thought he was lonely. David preferred to think of it as peaceful. He was good with horses, though, patient with an intuitive sense of what an animal needed. He had raised dozens of foals over the years, had a reputation for starting colts with a light hand and good foundation. But he hadn't bred any horses in 5 years. No real reason to with just himself to feed and the cattle paying the bills. Which made finding an abandoned foal in his barn even more confusing. David lived 8 miles from the nearest neighbor. His property was gated, and while he didn't keep it locked, you couldn't just stumble onto his place by accident. Someone had deliberately driven up his road. Into his barn. Left this foal in the middle of the night. Someone who knew him. Someone who had watched him with his horses. The thought made his skin prickle. But when he looked at Destiny wobbling around the stall on legs that barely worked, and sniffing at the bucket of water and not quite knowing what to do with it, his protective instincts kicked in. First things first, the foal needed to eat. Raising an orphan foal is one of the hardest things you can do with horses. They're fragile, prone to infection, They need to eat every 2 hours around the clock for the first few weeks. David knew all this from experience. He had bottle-raised 2 foals over the years, one whose mother rejected it and another whose mother died from complications after birth. But those foals had at least gotten colostrum, the vital first milk that gives newborns their immune system. Destiny was 4 days old. Had she gotten colostrum from her mother? There was no way to know. David mixed up the milk replacer according to the directions on the bag. High-quality stuff, not the cheap kind. He filled the bottle. Destiny sniffed at it suspiciously, then bumped it with her nose. Formula sprayed across David's shirt. "Come on, little girl," he murmured, and positioned the nipple at her mouth. "I know it's not your mama, but it's what we've got." It took 20 minutes and a lot of patience, but finally Destiny figured out how to suck on the bottle. She drained 16 ounces with enthusiasm, milk foam on her whiskers, her tiny tail swishing with contentment. David checked her over carefully while she ate. She seemed healthy, bright eyes, pink gums. No signs of dehydration or illness. Her umbilical stump was properly dried up. Someone had been taking care of her at least for the first few days of her life. But where was her mother, and why would someone abandon a healthy foal? Over the next few days, David fell into the exhausting routine of caring for a newborn. Feeding every 2 hours, even through the night. Cleaning the stall multiple times a day. Monitoring Destiny for any signs of illness. Foals could go downhill fast. He called the sheriff's department to report finding her. Filed the paperwork. But without any identifying marks or microchip, there wasn't much they could do. "If nobody claims her, in 90 days, she's legally yours," Deputy Collins told him. "But between you and me, David, whoever left her, wanted you to have her. They didn't dump her somewhere to die. They brought her to you specifically." David knew that was true, but it didn't answer the why. He took the note out of his pocket and read it again for the 100th time. "I've watched you with your horses." That meant someone local, someone who had been on his property or had seen him working. "She's everything good in this world." What did that mean? And the most haunting line, "You'll understand someday why I had to do this." What circumstances would make someone abandon a foal they clearly cared about? David wasn't a detective, but he started paying attention. He asked around at the feed store and casually mentioned that someone had left a foal at his place. Did anyone know of any mares that had foaled recently? Nobody did. He checked with the veterinarians in a 50-mile radius. None of them had records of a gray mare foaling in the past week. Whoever owned Destiny's mother hadn't used a vet for the birth. The brand inspector came out to check Destiny for any brands or identifying marks. Nothing. "She's a nice-looking foal," Inspector Rodriguez said, and ran her hands down Destiny's legs, checking her confirmation. "Good bone. Pretty head. Nice movement for a baby. Whoever bred her knew what they were doing. This isn't some backyard accident. This is a well-bred foal." That just made it more confusing. You didn't carefully breed horses and then abandon the foal unless something had gone terribly wrong. David kept coming back to that note, the tone of it, apologetic. Almost desperate. "I'm sorry for so much. And then thank you for saving her life." Saving her life from what? 2 weeks after finding Destiny, David was in town picking up feed when he ran into an old friend. Robert ran a small breeding operation about 20 miles away. "Hey, I heard you've got a new foal out at your place," Robert said. "Gray filly, that right?" "Word travels fast," David said. "Yeah, someone left her in my barn." "You know anything about it?" Robert's expression turned serious. "Can I see a picture?" David pulled out his phone and showed him a photo he had taken that morning, Destiny standing in the sunshine, her dark coat starting to show the dappling that would emerge as she grew. Robert stared at the photo for a long moment. David the First might know who that foal is, or at least who her mother is. "Can I come out to your place tomorrow?" Robert showed up the next morning with a folder full of papers. David met him at the barn where Destiny was playing in a small paddock, bucking and kicking, full of the joy that healthy foals have. "That's her," Robert said immediately. "I mean, I'd have to see her papers to be sure, but David the First think that foal is out of Sterling Silver Dream." David frowned. "Should I know that name?" Maybe not, but anyone serious about performance horses in this region does. Dream is a gray mare, owned by a woman named Christina Wells. She's a futurity winner. Earned over $200,000 in reining competitions. Her foals regularly sell for $15,000 to $30,000. She was bred to a stallion called Destined for Diamonds. Big-time reining horse. $3,500 stud fee. The foal from that breeding was supposed to be born in early October. David looked at Destiny. You're telling me this foal is worth $20,000 or $30,000? If she's who I think she is, yeah. And here's the thing. Christina Wells was in a bad accident about 6 months ago. Horse accident. She's been in a rehabilitation facility last I heard. I don't know what happened to her horses. David felt something cold settle in his stomach. What kind of accident? Got thrown and trampled. Broken back. Head injuries. She was in a coma for a while. Robert hesitated. David, there were rumors that she might not walk again. That she might not be the same mentally. I don't know how true that is, but I know her family was dealing with a lot. David pulled out the note and handed it to Robert. Does this handwriting look familiar? Robert studied it. Could be hers. Christina's in her 30s. Lives alone on a small place near Laramie. Where she did before the accident. Honestly, I don't know where she is now. I can't keep her. And I can't explain why. David looked at Destiny, who was nosing around the paddock, exploring everything, with the fearless curiosity of a foal. If Christina was hurt that badly, if she's in a facility somewhere, who took care of the mare? Who was there when this foal was born? That's what I've been wondering, Robert said. Because if Dream foaled alone without help, and someone had to figure out what to do with the baby, maybe they couldn't keep her. Maybe they knew Christina would want the foal to go somewhere safe, to someone who'd understand. But why not just call me? Why sneak around in the middle of the night? Robert looked uncomfortable. David I heard some other rumors. About Christina's family, her brother specifically. He was trying to get control of her assets while she was in the hospital. There was talk about him selling her horses. Liquidating everything. If someone was trying to protect this foal from being sold or sent to auction, they might have had to do it secretly. David felt his chest tighten. So someone stole a newborn foal to save it. That's a harsh way to put it, but maybe. David couldn't let it go. That night he did something he rarely did. He spent hours on the computer searching for information about Christina Wells. He found old competition videos. Christina riding Sterling Silver Dream. The pair of them moving as one unit, executing perfect spins and sliding stops. Christina's face was focused, intense. But there was joy there too. You could tell she loved what she was doing. He found a news article from 6 months ago, local reining competitor seriously injured in training accident. The article was sparse on details, just mentioned that Christina Wells had been hospitalized after being thrown from a horse. Then he found something else. A court filing from 3 months ago. Christina's brother, Richard Wells, had filed for emergency conservatorship, claiming his sister was mentally incapacitated and unable to manage her affairs. The case was still pending. David sat back in his chair with his jaw tight. He thought about the note again. I can't explain why. Maybe because explaining would put someone at risk. Maybe because the person who left Destiny was breaking the law to do the right thing. He looked out the window at the barn where Destiny was sleeping in her stall. A $30,000 foal, daughter of champions, left in his care by someone who trusted him to do right by her. The next morning, David made a decision. He called the phone number listed for Sterling Silver Dream's owner in the breed registry database. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. A woman's voice. Bright and confident. Hi, this is Christina. I'm probably out with the horses, but leave a message and I'll call you back. David left a message. Ms. Wells, my name is David Jenkins. I'm a rancher over in Carbon County, and I have a gray filly foal that I believe might be yours. She was left at my property about 3 weeks ago. If you could call me back, I'd appreciate it. He didn't expect to hear back, but 2 hours later his phone rang from a blocked number. Mr. Jenkins. The voice was soft, slurred slightly like someone recovering from a stroke. This is Christina Wells. You said you have my foal. They talked for an hour. Christina's speech was slow, and she had to pause often to find words, but her mind was sharp. She remembered everything. "I was writing dreams," she said. "Working on a new maneuver. I got cocky. Pushed too hard. She bucked me off, and I landed wrong. By the time I woke up in the hospital, it had been 3 weeks. They told me I'd broken my back, fractured my skull, that I was lucky to be alive." "I'm sorry," David said. "That must have been terrifying." "The worst part was my horses. I had 6 of them, including Dream, my brother Richard. He's not a bad person, but he doesn't understand horses. He just sees money. While I was unconscious, he started making plans to sell them. All of them. I tried to stop him when I woke up, but I couldn't even sign my own name. The doctor said I had brain damage. That I needed a conservator." Richard filed the papers. David's hand tightened on the phone. "What happened to the horses?" "He sold 5 of them. Quick sales to whoever would pay. I don't even know where they went." Her voice broke. "But Dream was pregnant. She was due in October. Richard wanted to sell her too, but she was too close to foaling. Nobody wants to transport a heavily pregnant mare, so she stayed." "Who was taking care of her?" "My neighbor Elaine. She's 70 years old, has a little hobby farm next to my place. She'd been checking on the horses for me after the accident." When Richard sold the others, Elaine begged him to let her keep Dream until the foal came. He agreed, but only because he thought he'd get more money by selling them separately after. David felt his stomach turn. "And the foal?" "Was born 4 days before Elaine brought her to you. Yes. Elaine called me at the rehab facility, told me Dream had a beautiful gray filly, healthy, strong, perfect. But she also told me Richard was already making calls to horse traders. He was going to sell them both, probably to separate buyers for whatever he could get quickly." Christina paused, and David could hear her take a shaky breath. "That's when we made the plan. Elaine told Richard the foal had died, that Dream had rejected her, and she'd passed away before Elaine could get a vet out. Richard believed it because he doesn't know anything about horses. It bought us time to get Destiny to you before he figured out the truth. So Elaine brought the foal to me." "I told her to," Christina said, and now her voice was firm despite the slurred speech. "I couldn't save all my horses, Mr. Jenkins, but I could save one. Elaine and I looked up local ranchers with good reputations. Your name came up over and over. People said you were honest, kind to your animals, patient with youngsters. I told Elaine to take Destiny to you. I wrote the note, though it took me 20 minutes with my hand shaking. Elaine drove out to your place in the middle of the night and put my baby in your barn." Christina, David said quietly. "That foal is worth a lot of money. You could have." "Could have what?" Her voice was sharp now. "Watched her go to auction? Watched some dealer buy her for $500 and flip her to whoever? Mr. Jenkins, I've spent my whole life breeding horses for performance. Dream is the best mare I've ever owned, and Destined for Diamonds is a legend. That foal has the potential to be exceptional. But more than that, she's the last piece of the life I built before everything fell apart. I needed her to go somewhere she'd be valued, not as money, but as a horse." David was quiet for a moment. "What about Dream? Your neighbor still has her?" "For now. She told Richard that a mare needs a few months to recover after giving birth before being moved." "And you? What's your prognosis?" Christina laughed. "A bitter sound. The doctors say I'll walk again. Maybe. That I'll regain more speech function with therapy, but it'll take time. Months. Maybe years. And I don't have years, Mr. Jenkins. Richard is liquidating my assets. By the time I can fight him in court, there won't be anything left to fight for." David looked out the window at Destiny, who was grazing in the paddock, her tiny muzzle working on grass she couldn't quite eat yet. "Christina," he said slowly, "what do you want me to do with your foal?" She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. "I want you to keep her. I want you to raise her. Train her. Give her the life she deserves. I want her to become everything she's meant to be. And someday, if I get better, if I get my life back, I want to come see her. I want to watch her move. But I'm not asking for her back. I'm asking you to give her the future I can't." After he hung up with Christina, David sat on his porch for a long time thinking. Legally, Destiny would be his in another 70 days, when the claim period expired. Christina had essentially given him a $30,000 horse. He could raise her, train her, maybe even sell her for a profit. Or he could do something else. He called his lawyer, a woman named Beverly who had helped him with estate planning after Leslie died. Bev, I need to know about conservatorships. If someone's under conservatorship but mentally competent, can they fight it? Absolutely, Beverly said. But they need representation, and they need to demonstrate competency. Why? David explained the situation. When he finished, Beverly was quiet for a moment. David, this is messy. If you involve yourself, you could end up in legal trouble. That foal was technically removed from the property without the conservator's permission. So what would you do? David asked. If you were me, I'd make sure that woman gets the help she needs to fight for herself. Because this isn't just about a horse. It's about someone's whole life being taken from them when they're most vulnerable. David called Christina back. I want to help you, he said. Not just with Destiny, but with everything. What would it take to challenge the conservatorship? Money I don't have, Christina said bluntly. Legal fees. Expert witnesses to testify that I'm competent. Even if I can prove I'm recovering, Richard will argue that I'm not stable enough to manage a property and horses. And honestly, right now, he might be right. I'm still learning to walk again. I can't take care of horses by myself. What if you didn't have to? David said. What if we worked out a partnership? It took 3 months to put everything together. David hired Beverly to represent Christina in the conservatorship challenge. They brought in neurologists and rehabilitation specialists who testified that while Christina had physical limitations, she was mentally competent and improving steadily. They also presented a business plan. David would provide property and hands-on care for Christina's horses, the ones they could recover, plus Dream and Destiny. Christina would retain ownership and make breeding and sales decisions as a partner in a new business, Wells Jenkins Performance Horses. The judge reviewed the evidence and agreed to dissolve the conservatorship on the condition that Christina have a co-manager for her horse business and continue her rehabilitation therapy. Richard contested it, but without strong evidence that his sister was incompetent, the motion failed. 2 weeks after the conservatorship was lifted, Elaine brought Dream to the Jenkins ranch. David watched from the barn as they unloaded the gray mare. She was stunning, 15 hands of perfect quarter-horse conformation, with a gentle eye and that ground-covering movement that performance horses have. She walked down the trailer ramp and immediately started calling. From the paddock, Destiny's head shot up. The foal, now 4 months old and filled out into a beautiful youngster, started running along the fence, whinnying frantically. Dream answered with that deep rumbling nicker that mares use with their babies. They released her into the paddock, and the reunion was instant. Dream rushed to Destiny, sniffing her all over, making soft sounds. Destiny buried her face in her mother's neck, her whole body trembling with joy. David felt his eyes burning. Beside him, Elaine was crying openly. I didn't think we'd ever get to do this, she said. I thought they'd be separated forever. They're home now, David said. Both of them. Christina came to the ranch on a Saturday in late spring, almost 6 months after David had found Destiny in his barn. She came with Elaine driving, and David watched as they helped her out of the car. She was in a wheelchair, but she was alert and smiling. Mr. Jenkins, she said, and her speech was clearer now, though still careful. Thank you for having me. David, please, he said, and you don't have to thank me. I should be thanking you for giving me a foal that destroyed my sleep schedule for 2 months. She laughed. You're welcome, I guess. He wheeled her down to the paddock where Dream and Destiny were grazing. It was a perfect Wyoming afternoon, the mountains clear against a blue sky, the grass green from spring rain. When Dream saw Christina, she came to the fence immediately, nickering. Christina reached up with tears streaming down her face, and Dream lowered her head so Christina could touch her, could run her hands over that familiar face. Hey, beautiful girl, Christina whispered. I missed you so much. Destiny, curious about the stranger, came over too. She was 6 months old now, grown into a leggy youngster with a dappled gray coat and her mother's elegant head. She sniffed Christina's chair, then decided the woman was safe, and stood patiently while Christina examined her. "She's perfect," Christina said, looking up at David. "You did such a good job with her. She's a good filly, smart, brave, willing. She's going to be something special." Christina nodded. "I always knew she would be. That's why I named her Destiny. I knew from the breeding that this foal was destined for greatness. I just didn't know how much she was destined to change all our lives." They talked for hours that afternoon, about horses and training, about the future of their partnership, about the 2 colts David was starting for other clients. Christina couldn't ride yet, but she could teach. Her knowledge of performance horse training was encyclopedic, and David found himself taking notes as she explained the finer points of reining maneuvers. "You know," Christina said as the sun started to set, "I thought losing my horses was the worst thing that could happen to me. I thought my brother destroyed my life when he sold them, but if none of that had happened, I wouldn't have met you. Dream would still be with me, but Destiny would just be another foal. Now she's the horse that brought us all together, the horse that gave me a reason to fight for my future." David smiled. "Funny how that works. After my wife died, I thought I'd just run this ranch alone until I couldn't anymore. I didn't think I needed partnerships or help or friends. But sometimes life puts things in your path that you didn't know you needed. Like a foal in your barn in the middle of the night. Exactly like that." Destiny grew fast. By the time she was a yearling, she had filled out beautifully, with a dappled gray coat that was beginning to lighten. David had started her ground training, teaching her to lead, to stand for grooming, to accept being handled all over. She was everything Christina had predicted: smart, willing, athletic. Christina came to the ranch twice a week for therapy sessions that doubled as training consultations. She was walking now with a cane, her speech almost back to normal. The physical scars were fading, but the emotional ones had transformed her. She was quieter than she had been before the accident, more thoughtful, but also more grateful for every day. The partnership was working. David provided the physical labor and facilities. Christina provided expertise and breeding knowledge. They had recovered 1 more of Christina's horses from a sale barn, and they had 2 client horses in training. It wasn't making anyone rich, but it was sustainable. And Dream was pregnant again, bred to another outstanding stallion, due to foal in the spring. On Destiny's first birthday, they threw a small party. Just David and Christina and Elaine and a few neighbors. They took photos of Destiny with a birthday hat made of flowers, which she immediately tried to eat. Christina cut a special horse-safe cake made of oats and molasses. After everyone left, David and Christina stood by the fence watching Destiny play with her mother in the evening light. "You know," Christina said, "I never thanked you properly for everything. For taking her in. For helping me fight Richard. For giving me a reason to keep going when everything felt hopeless." "You don't have to thank me," David said. "Destiny changed my life too. After Leslie died, I was just existing, going through the motions. Then this foal showed up and forced me to care again, forced me to connect with people, to build something new. She didn't just need saving. I did too." Christina was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that note I wrote, about how I said you'd understand someday why I had to leave her with you. Do you understand now?" David thought about it, about how Destiny had led him to Christina, to a partnership that had become a friendship, about how saving one foal had ended up saving a woman's future and giving him a new purpose, about how sometimes the things that seem random or desperate are actually the beginning of something bigger. "Yeah," he said, "I understand. She was meant to be here. We were meant to find each other, all of us." Christina smiled. "Destiny. It's a good name, isn't it? Because she wasn't just destined for greatness as a horse. She was destined to bring us all together." In the paddock, Destiny reared up playfully, her silver coat gleaming in the sunset, her whole life ahead of her. A foal who had been abandoned to be saved. A horse who had been lost so she could be found. A partnership born from desperation that had become hope. David watched her and thought about that note he had found tied to her halter, about how he had cried reading those words in the dark barn. He understood now that those tears weren't just for a foal, they were for everything she represented. Second chances, new beginnings. The possibility that even when everything falls apart, something beautiful can emerge from the broken pieces. "Come on," Christina said, starting toward the barn with her cane. "Let's bring them in for the night. Dream needs her evening feed, and Destiny always gets cranky if we're late." David laughed and followed her, grateful for this unexpected family he had found. A woman who had lost everything and fought to get it back. A foal who had been abandoned to save her life. A partnership that had healed them both. And it all started with a note tied to a halter, read by flashlight in a dark barn by a man who thought his life was already written. Sometimes David thought the best chapters are the ones you never see coming. 3 years after finding Destiny in his barn, David stood in the center of a show arena in Oklahoma City, his heart pounding as the announcer's voice boomed across the loudspeakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, competing in the Level 2 open reining, riding Destiny's Silver Dream, please welcome Christina Wells." The crowd applauded as Christina rode Destiny into the arena, the mare, because Destiny was a mare now, fully grown at 4 years old. She was stunning, silver gray, perfectly muscled, moving with the grace and power that came from careful training and natural talent. Christina looked different too, confident in the saddle, no sign of the wheelchair or the cane. She had worked for 3 years to get here, through pain and setbacks, and countless hours of physical therapy, but she had made it. David watched from the rail as they performed their pattern. Every maneuver was precise. The spins, the rollbacks, the sliding stop that sent dust flying. Destiny was brilliant, and Christina rode her with a connection that only comes from a deep bond between horse and rider. When they finished, the crowd roared. Christina rode out of the arena with tears streaming down her face, and David was there to meet her. "She was perfect," he said, with his voice thick with emotion. "Both of you were perfect." "We didn't win," Christina said, but she was smiling. "Doesn't matter. You did what everyone said was impossible. You're here, you're riding, and you're doing it on the horse that saved both our lives." They didn't win that day. They placed 4th, which was still respectable in a field of talented competitors. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the journey. What mattered was that a foal who had been abandoned in a barn had grown into a champion. That a woman who had lost everything had rebuilt her life. That a lonely rancher had found purpose again. That night, back at the hotel, David's phone rang. It was Elaine. "How'd they do?" she asked. "4th place," David said. "But Elaine, you should have seen them. It was beautiful." "I knew it would be. That foal was special from the day she was born. I knew it when I left her in your barn. I knew you'd do right by her." "You took a hell of a risk," David said. "What if I had just sold her? What if I'd never called Christina?" Elaine laughed. "David the First watched you for months before that night. I saw how you treated your horses, how you were gentle with the nervous ones and patient with the difficult ones. I knew what kind of man you were. That's why I chose you, and I was right." After they hung up, David sat on the hotel balcony looking out at the city lights. He thought about that morning 4 years ago when he had found a foal in his barn, about the note that had made him cry, about all the ways one small act of desperate hope had changed everything. His phone buzzed with a text from Christina. "Thank you for believing in us, both of us. Destiny and me. You gave us our future back." David typed back, "You gave me mine too." And it was true. Because sometimes salvation comes in the most unexpected packages. Sometimes it's a foal with a note tied to her halter. Sometimes it's a partnership born from crisis. Sometimes it's learning that the family you build is just as powerful as the one you're born into. David had thought his story was over when Leslie died. He thought he'd live out his years alone running a ranch that would die with him. Instead, he had found Christina and Elaine and Destiny. He had found purpose and partnership and something that felt like joy again. All because someone left a foal in his barn and trusted him to do the right thing. and that David thought as he looked up at the stars over Oklahoma City was the real magic. Not that Destiny was destined for greatness though she was, but that she was destined to bring broken people together and show them how to heal. One small gray foal, one desperate note, one choice to care instead of walking away. That's all it took to change everything.